It is, in fact, the Ravens with a win over the Bengals. That loss plus Burrow's availability now in question. And we've got questions. The two-time champ Bryant McFadden here to offer his insight alongside Emery Hunt as well. I'm your host, Joe Musso. Let's start right there, gentlemen. With this loss, now sitting at 5-5 at the bottom of the division and their quarterback in question. Is this roll credits if Joe Burrow cannot go in the weeks to come?
Not with the way we've seen the entire NFL play out so far this season. We've seen backups come in and have some success and keep their teams afloat, some even superseding what the starter was able to do. And if you're the Bengals, you have a guy that has been there in Jake Browning. He showed some toughness, showed some fight in this ball game. And you also like the fact they still have Joe Mixon. They still have a slew of receivers and tight ends. And their defense, I think, can lead from the front. So all is not lost. If this year is of any indication, we've seen that teams can rely on their backup. I know I'm spinning things positively here, but Joe Burrow is a huge miss and loss for the Bengals, but Brownie can help keep them afloat in the AFC.
Well, I'm going to keep it real with Cincinnati and the fans. No, their season, if Joe Burrow is not healthy, it's the loss. I understand Emery is trying to give you guys the brighter side of things in regards to what this could mean, but I'm going to be a realist. And the reason why I feel that way, yes, Emery, you're right. It has been the year of the backup in the NFL. But the other teams that have seen nice quality play from their backup quarterbacks, they don't play in the AFC North, the toughest division in the NFL. So Jake Browning did come in unexpectedly and play some pretty good football. But in this division, your backup quarterback is going to see outstanding defensive play, not to mention for Cincinnati already being in the bottom of the AFC North. They have yet to win a game in the division. So if they don't have Joe Burrow, if they don't have a healthy Joe Burrow, because remember what we saw what Joe Burrow looked like playing but wasn't healthy the earlier parts of the year, he didn't look like himself. So if they don't have Joe Burrow in the lineup, no, Joe, Emery, it's a lost season.
Well, let's keep this up right here, and I want to go back to you, B-Mac, because you're talking about the North, and it feels like 10 minutes ago we were talking about a division that could send 4 teams to the playoffs. We have since then had injury news in Cleveland. We now have injury news in Cincinnati, the extent of which we do not know specifically yet. You have Kenny Pickett trying to keep the Pittsburgh Steelers afloat. It's Mike Tomlin, that defense, and a newfound run game a week ago doing so. Yes, it is a 6-3 team, but Baltimore, with this win, becomes the first team, not just in the division, but in the conference, to 8 wins, B-Mac. It obviously runs through the Ravens. But when you're looking at the grander picture of this division, is this now a one-team playoff division, B-Mac?
I still think 2 teams could get in. You know, the likelihood of having 4 teams get in, especially with the new injury to Joe Burrow, and granted, we don't know how severe it is, but he wasn't able to come back. It limits the AFC North having, you know, at least 3 to 4 teams get in, right? And then, of course, with Deshaun Watson being out of the lineup for the Cleveland Browns. But I still think 2 teams get in. You know, I think when you look at the makeup of the entire AFC, you know, look at the East. Right? Do you think 2 teams can get in to the playoffs? We want to say Buffalo should get in.
This last 48 hours does bring Buffalo, it feels like, back into the conversation with health on their side, if nothing else.
It does, but yet and still, we don't know what we're going to get from Josh Allen. He is a liability for their team, and it's hard to say that or admit that, but based on his play, yes. And then when you transition out west to the AFC West, do we see multiple teams getting to the playoffs from the West? I'm not quite ready to say that. I do believe the South could sneak in an extra team when you look at the emergence of the Houston Texans, and I do believe Jacksonville will have something to say as well. But when you look at the AFC, the entire AFC, guys, I mean, it's not like it's extremely deep in regards to competitive ball play. So the AFC North could still get multiple teams, but when you talk about 3 or 4 with the quarterback injuries, no, I'll say no.
Yeah, Emery, as we assess here now, a big logjam there at 5-5. A live Chargers team, I'll say it, at 4-5. A Jets team holding out hope for a multitude of things. The Broncos on a winning streak right now, the longest win streak in the AFC. So it's going to get wild. The Browns sitting at 6-3, the Steelers sitting at 6-3, the Texans at 5-4. Conceivably, I mean, this is an evergreen statement. The games do have to be played, but conceivably, you could be looking at 3 different teams from 5-7 when it's all said and done.
6 will come down, in my opinion, to the Browns and or Steelers and the Broncos. You think about who the Broncos have beaten. Buffalo, and they have beaten the Chiefs. And their schedule sets up nice for them down the stretch. So the Broncos, to me, benefits more than anybody tonight with the Bengals losing, because I do feel like B-Mac is absolutely right. We may only get 2 teams in from the AFC North, and it's either going to be the winner and also Steelers or the Browns, depending on how they do this weekend against each other. But Denver, sitting at 4-5, has the opportunity to really move up. We don't really believe in the Colts. We don't really believe in the Raiders. And then moving forward, I do, like B-Mac, believe in the Houston Texans, which makes things tight in that AFC South. But Denver, to me, right now, was the biggest winner based off the Bengals losing this game.
That is all on the ripple effect of an injury to the right hand of one of the best quarterbacks in the game, in Joe Burrow, in this game. It was not the only injury in this game, and it was one earlier in the game. First drive, coming down the field, Mark Andrews, multiple targets. He is the straw that stirs the drink in that offense, Emery. They're able to win this matchup without Mark Andrews. Now, we don't know the extent of that injury, but it did not look good here nor in the locker room on the way to for Andrews. What are the Ravens without their star tight end? We saw a version of it tonight, but is that the version that will come to play week in and week out if they are in the absence of 89?
Well, when you lose a guy like Mark Andrews, what happens is it puts a lot of strain on everyone else to consistently make plays. You saw Odell Beckham rise to the occasion. We saw a touchdown get taken away from Zay Flowers. I think it opens the door for a guy like Charlie Kohler, who I like coming out of Iowa State. He's more of the vertical threat, the stretch threat at the tight end position, more so than Isaiah Likely. I think that opens things up for him. But you're requiring him to really step up and be, a veteran in his second season, really his first season fully out there healthy and playing ball. But when you think about everyone else, you're going to have to ask more out of Odell Beckham Jr. You're going to have to ask more out of Zay Flowers. We saw Nelson Aguilar get into the end zone. We saw Rashad Bateman get into the end zone. Having him absent makes everyone else's job a lot tougher, but they're going to have to rise to the occasion, and there's a slew of first-round picks at receiver to get the job done.
This is the one year where if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you can afford to maybe have an injury to a guy like Mark Andrews because of the other names that you've mentioned, right, Emery? And now what we're starting to see, the passing game is starting to click. Remember, earlier in the year, we really didn't see Odell Beckham Jr. showing up. Right now, we're seeing him show up. Zay Flowers has been showing up since day one, but the others are starting to emerge to be quality sound contributors for this passing attack. And this was a good sign for them going against a defense that has been playing pretty good football, but yet still has been vulnerable from time to time. And they were able to exploit those opportunities in their favor. Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman, and of course, Zay Flowers. So those are 4 guys that are highly invested in regards to draft picks, and they have now started to show up for Lamar Jackson. But hopefully, when you talk about trying to get to a Super Bowl, if you're going to do that, if you're Baltimore, you got to have a healthy Mark Andrews.
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me on no Andrews, but no Joe Burrow would mean this for the Bengals. Our Sportsline projection, even with Burrow, following this loss, projected a 38% chance of the Bengals making the postseason. Without Burrow for the next 2 or more weeks, that drops to 25% to make the playoffs. We're going to see how it all plays out in the AFC, but this could be a massive loss for Cincinnati.
I will say this. Shout out to Kyle Hamilton. He's been playing amazing football the last couple of weeks.
Definitely.
He has really turned into someone that they are starting to hang their hats on in both coverage, blitzing, and also how he plays the run.
Hey, lead with defense has been the mantra in Baltimore for some time. If that offense can score with them, it's going to be a tough team moving forward. B-Mac, Emery, we appreciate it as always. And there's only one place to be this Sunday. When they finish, we start. Highlights, reaction, sound you won't want to miss. Join us on Game Day Scoreboard each and every Sunday, beginning at 4 Eastern, till they stop keeping score. Let's take you back out to the stadium. Zach Taylor addressing the media.